The afternoon sky was painted with shades of gray, the kind that promised rain but didn't yet deliver. I had finished work early and found myself wandering aimlessly through the old streets of my college neighborhood. Something about that part of town always tugged at my heart. The narrow sidewalks, the bookstore that still smelled like coffee and old paper, and the cafe at the corner where time once stood still. I hadn't planned to go inside, but my feet moved on their own. The bell over the door jingled softly as I stepped in, shaking off the light drizzle. The familiar scent of roasted beans and warm pastries wrapped around me like a forgotten memory. For a moment, I felt like the young woman I used to be, carefree, unburdened, and full of dreams. Then I saw him, Daniel. He was sitting by the window, reading a book, the same way he used to. His hair was a little shorter, his face more mature, but that unmistakable spark in his eyes was still there. My breath caught in my throat. We hadn't spoken since my wedding, years ago, but in that instant, it felt as if no time had passed at all. When his gaze lifted and met mine, recognition flashed across his face. He stood up, that familiar crooked smile spreading across his lips. "Anna, is it really you?" I laughed nervously, my pulse racing. "Daniel, wow, it's been so long." We hugged briefly, a moment too warm, too familiar. Sitting down across from him, conversation flowed effortlessly. We talked about work, life, lost time, everything and nothing at once. He told me about his divorce, the loneliness that followed, and I shared little pieces of my quiet married life. The rain outside grew heavier, droplets racing down the window beside us. The world felt smaller, the cafe quieter, like we were the only two people in it. When his hand brushed mine as he reached for his cup, a shock of warmth spread through me. I didn't move. When I finally stood to leave, my heart was unsteady, filled with emotions I didn't understand. It was supposed to be just a friendly reunion. But as I walked away, I realized I had opened a door I wasn't sure I could close again. Days turned into weeks, and what began as a harmless reconnection slowly evolved into something far more complicated. Daniel and I found excuses to see each other. A coffee after work, a lunch break that ran a little too long, or a quick text that turned into an hour-long conversation. Each moment felt innocent enough on the surface, but beneath it, emotions I thought I'd buried years ago began to stir. He had a way of listening that made me feel seen, truly seen. When I spoke, he didn't interrupt or offer advice. He simply looked at me like every word I said mattered. My husband, Mark, was good and kind but distant. Our conversations now limited to schedules, bills, and family updates. With Daniel, there was laughter, shared memories, and the kind of attention I hadn't felt in years. One evening, he invited me to see his new photography studio. "Just a quick visit," he said over the phone. "I want to show you what I've been working on." I hesitated but agreed, convincing myself it was harmless. The studio was warm and dimly lit, filled with photos of sunsets, city lights, and quiet faces. "You've always had an eye for beauty," I said softly, running my fingers along a frame. He stepped closer, his voice low. "I could say the same about you." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us grew heavy, charged with unspoken desire. When he reached out to tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear, I froze, not out of fear, but because my heart was pounding so fast it almost hurt. Our eyes met, and something inside me broke. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. But I didn't. The kiss was gentle at first, hesitant, searching, and then it deepened, becoming everything we'd been holding back. When I finally stepped back, breathless, the weight of what I'd done hit me like a wave. "Daniel," I whispered, "we can't do this." "I know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But tell me you didn't feel it too." I couldn't answer. Because I had. That night, as I drove home through the quiet streets, guilt and longing battled inside me. I knew one truth with painful clarity. I had crossed a line I could never uncross. The days after that night felt both exhilarating and torturous. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart leapt, terrified it might be someone who knew, yet hoping it was Daniel. We told ourselves it had been a mistake, that we wouldn't let it happen again. But mistakes don't replay themselves in your mind with such warmth, such ache. It didn't stop. Our messages became more frequent, our meetings harder to resist. We met in quiet places, a bookstore corner, a park bench at dusk, or a coffee shop 2 towns over where no one knew us. Each time I promised it would be the last. Each time I broke that promise. At home, life carried on like a well-rehearsed play. Mark noticed nothing, or maybe he chose not to. He'd been working late, traveling often, trying to provide more for us. The irony wasn't lost on me. The more he gave, the further away I drifted. I caught myself staring at him sometimes, guilt pressing against my ribs, wondering when I had stopped trying. Daniel, too, was torn. We both knew the line we'd crossed had changed everything. Yet when we were together, the rest of the world faded away. His laughter, the way he held my hand, the comfort in his voice. It all felt so easy, so natural. It was wrong, but it also felt like home. One afternoon, he suggested a short getaway. Just a few hours by the beach, he said. No distractions, no pretending. I hesitated. But when he looked at me with those familiar eyes, I couldn't say no. The beach was quiet, the air cool and heavy with salt. We walked along the shoreline, shoes in hand, waves brushing our feet. For the first time, there were no words, just silence, peaceful, heavy, honest. As the sun began to dip into the horizon, I whispered, "I hope no one ever discovers our secret." Daniel looked at me, a soft sadness in his eyes. "They won't," he said quietly. "But one day we'll have to live with it." That night, as we watched the fading light disappear beyond the sea, I realized what he meant. Some secrets don't destroy you immediately. They live quietly inside you, waiting for the moment they do. Months passed, and the fire that once burned between Daniel and me began to dim, not because the feelings faded, but because reality finally caught up. Every message, every secret meeting felt heavier than the last. We had built a fragile world made of stolen moments and hidden truths, and slowly it began to crack. Daniel's new job offer came like an unspoken decision. "They want me in another city," he told me one evening, his voice calm but distant. I tried to smile, pretending to be supportive, but inside my heart twisted. "Maybe it's for the best," I said softly. He looked at me, sadness flickering in his eyes, and for the first time we both knew it was goodbye. Our last meeting was quiet. We sat in his car near the park where we used to meet, the windows fogged from the rain. No grand declarations, no promises, just silence. When he reached for my hand, I held it tightly, memorizing the warmth, the shape, the comfort I'd grown to crave. "Take care of yourself," he whispered. "You deserve more than what this has been." When he drove away, it felt like a piece of me went with him. At home, everything looked the same, but nothing felt familiar anymore. Mark noticed the change, the distant eyes, the quiet dinners, the forced smiles. One night he asked, "Anna, are you happy with me?" The question hung in the air like smoke. I wanted to confess everything, to pour out the truth and beg for forgiveness. But the words died in my throat. "I don't know," I finally said, tears welling in my eyes. He reached across the table, taking my hand gently. "Then let's try to fix it," he whispered. His kindness made the guilt unbearable. Time moved on, but the memory of Daniel lingered like a shadow. I'd catch glimpses of him in strangers, hear echoes of his laughter in dreams. I buried the secret deep inside, locking it away where no one could find it, not even me. Sometimes when I pass that old cafe, I stop and stare through the window. I see two people laughing, lost in the illusion of something pure. Then I blink and they're gone. I hope no one ever discovers our secret, not because I'm ashamed, but because it reminds me of who I was when I forgot who I wanted to be. It was unforgettable, and that's what hurts the most.